Shri Guru. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Padaya Shrimate Namo Shonita Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Padaya Shrimate Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From the word for word, Anam Cha Ururasam Tebhyaha Datva Bhagavat Arpanam Go Vipra Artha Asavaha Shuraha Kshatriyas, pardon me, Pranemuhu Bhuvi Murdhavi Anam Korurasam Debhyo Datva Bhagavatarpanam Go Viprartha Savashura Pranemur Bhuvi Murdhavi Anam Korurasam Debhyo Datva Bhagavatarpanam Go Viprartha Savashura Pranemur Vimurdhavihi. Anam Korurasam Tebhyo
Anam Korurasam Tebhyo
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Go Viprartha Savashura Pranemur Vimurdhavihi. Anam Korurasam Tebhyo
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Viprartha Savashura
Go Viprartha Savashura Pranemur Vimurdhavihi.
Anam Korurasam Tebhyo
Anam Korurasam Tebhyo
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Datva Bhagavatarpanam
Go Viprartha Savashura
Go Viprartha Savashura
Pranemur Bhuvimurdhavihi.
Pranemur Vimurdhavihi.
Anam choro rasam tebyo
Anam chodorasam tebhyo
Tattva bhagavatarpanam
Tattva bhagavadarpanam
Go viprartha savashura
Go viprartha savasura
Pranemo bhuvimur tabehi
Pranemur bhuvimur dabhihi
Anam chodorasam tebhyo
Anam chodorasam tebhyo
Tattva bhagavatarpanam
Tattva bhagavadarpanam
Viparta savasuraha
Go viprartha savasura
Pranemo bhuvimur davihi
Pranemur bhuvimur dabhihi Anam, foodstuff. Cha, also. Ururasam, highly delicious. Tebyaha, unto the brahmanas. Dattva, after supplying. Bhagavat arpanam, which was first offered to the personality of Godhead. Go, cows. Vipra, brahmanas. Artha, purpose. Asavaha, purpose of living. Shuraha, all the valiant kshatriyas. Pranemuhu, offered obeisances. Bhuvi, touching the ground. Murdabihi, with their heads. Translation. Thereafter, they offered the brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the brahmanas. Purport. The behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu in the pilgrimage site of Prabhasa was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. The perfection of human life is attained by following three principles of civilization: protecting the cows, maintaining the Brahminical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world, where there is no birth, no death, no disease, and no old age. That is the highest perfectional aim of life. Without this aim, any amount of material advancement in so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted by the devotees as the mercy of the Lord. After all, the Lord supplies all kinds of foodstuff, both to the human being and to other animals. A human being must be conscious of the fact that all foodstuffs, namely grains, vegetables, milk, water, etc., the prime necessities of life, are supplied for mankind by the Lord. And such foodstuffs cannot be manufactured by any scientist or materialist in a laboratory or factory established by human effort. The intelligent class of men are called Brahmanas, and those who have realized the absolute truth in his supreme personal feature are called Vaishnavas. But both of them accept foodstuffs which are the remnants of sacrifice. Sacrifice is ultimately meant to satisfy the Yajna Purusha, Vishnu. In Bhagavad Gita 3.13, it is said that one who accepts foodstuffs as the remnant of sacrifice is freed from all sinful reactions, and one who cooks foodstuffs for maintenance of his body takes in all kinds of sins. which lead only to suffering. The foodstuffs prepared by the Yadus at the Prabhasa pilgrimage site to offer to the bona fide Brahmanas there were all offered to the personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The Yadus offered their sincere obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. The Yadus, or any enlightened family in Vedic culture, are trained for attainment of human perfection by total cooperation of service between the different divisions of social orders. The word Ururasam is also significant here. Hundreds of delicacies can be prepared simply by the combination of grains, vegetables, and milk. All such preparations are in the mode of goodness, and therefore may be offered to the personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.26, the Lord accepts only foodstuffs which are within the range of fruits, flowers, leaves, and liquids, provided they are offered in complete devotional service. Devotional service is the only criterion for a bona fide offering to the Lord. The Lord assures that He positively eats such foodstuffs offered by the devotees. So, judging from all sides, the Yadus were perfectly trained, civilized persons, and their being cursed by the Brahmana sages was only by the desire of the Lord. The whole incident was a warning to all concerned that no one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 3rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Maharsh, we'd love to hear your comments today.
The previous incident where the young Yadus were joking with the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas was out of character because it was the creation of the Lord. In other words, everyone is either under the Daivi Shakti, the internal potency of the Lord, Yogamaya, or the external energy, Mahamaya, and the Yadu dynasty. They were all under the internal potency. So it was unexpected for them to do such a thing. And Prabhupada is explaining in these purports how it was the plan of the Lord that there had to be some way for the Lord to tactfully remove the Yadu dynasty from the earth because no one could defeat them. And then if no one was able to defeat them, there's no way they could leave. They wouldn't die because they were performing so many sacrifices. Therefore, Lord made this arrangement. So the Lord made an arrangement for Arjuna to forget his duties and to become overwhelmed by illusion. Arjuna is a friend of the Lord eternally, and it's not expected that he's going to act like an ordinary person or become bewildered about his duty. But in order to fulfill the pastime, the Lord is arranged like this. And that explains it. It was the Lord's desire. There are other reasons too. Gandhari cursed Krishna to have his whole dynasty, his whole family, annihilated before his eyes. Gandhari, the mother of the Dhritarashtra and sons, was a great yogi, very pronounced, and normally she would take it quite respectfully to Krishna, but she felt that she was so overwhelmed by how her sons were killed. They're all slaughtered by Bhima, and not one of them lived. They were all died. They all. So she was so upset with Krishna. She knew Krishna was the supreme personality of God. He could arrange whatever he wanted. And he could have protected those sons had he wanted to, at least one of them. But he didn't protect any of them. She was so upset. She said, as you have all my sons, then all of your family will also have to die for you. And he said, I accept that. But that was also part of the plan. The Lord's plans are impossible for ordinary persons to understand. I can't expect that we would be able to understand. But we have to hear these things as they're presented in the Vedas and accept them as truth. And these are mysterious, transcendental pastimes of the Lord. There's unlimited pastimes. Why does the Lord appear as a fish? Why does the Lord appear as a half man, half lion? There's reasons behind everything. And the devotees relish hearing the reasons.
Thank you. So this knowledge of why the Lord comes and in what forms he comes, authorized descriptions of the Lord, which are found in the scripture, and they're carried by the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas specifically. So here in this purport, we're hearing that both of these classes of men, or one actually, Vaishnava transcends gender, but as well as Brahmana. Well, there's also Brahmanis. So what I mean to say is that the Brahmanas are and the Vaishnavas are two classes of beings, and the Brahmanas are the intelligent class of men, and so they're meant to understand Brahman. There's a nice Sanskrit which describes that the Brahmanas means that they understand Brahman, iti Brahmana, like that. And Vaishnavas are in actually a whole nother class. So the Vaishnavas have realized the absolute truth in his supreme personal feature. So there's different stages of a Brahminical life. There's a Brahmana. Actually, it's said that everybody's born a Shudra. So everybody is born a Shudra. And I think it said Jayate. So this birth in this mature world by a mother and father is not the qualification for attaining status in the Varnashram system as a Brahmana, but it's training. So training is stressed more than other things. So one of these trainings, which is there for the Brahmanas, which is subordinate category or status to Vaishnavas, is that they're trained to only accept foodstuff which is first offered to the personality of Godhead, and vice versa. Whenever there's like a training or a rule, then there's also the antithesis of that, which is also equally valid, which is that they do not accept any food which is not first offered, which is something that we hear about in Nectar of Instruction. Specifically, Srila Prabhupada discusses in the verse from Rupa Goswami, Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam. So Vegam means urges and Jiva means the tongue. So there's the urge of speech, which is Vacho, like Uvacha, right? But then there's the or Jiva, right? Then this Jiva means the tongue. So the tongue, Prabhupada describes, is controlled not necessarily through a material means, or not a mechanical means, but actually a transcendental means of controlling the tongue. So then it's stated, and it's the faith of the devotees, that simply by accepting the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna with the proper consciousness, with love and devotion as a service, meanwhile performing all his other regulated activities, then the urges of the tongue will automatically be controlled. So actually this is faith, that we understand that if I take the highest principle, which is to engage in the Lord's service, then all the subordinate principles will be achieved through that stroke. So that's what we stress as devotees. We don't generally stress some of the more finer, or more detailed points, but rather in general we just encourage people to take prasadam. And sometimes we don't even have to explain it to them. We just give it to them. And then they're automatically practicing at least that meal. They practice the highest principle. Whereas the subordinate principles, probably they'll never accept. Like we say, we know that there's also some details in the scriptures which talk about how much to fill the belly, which is discussed by Lord Kapiladev, that there should be 1/2 of the belly, which I'm told is not very large, should be filled with foodstuffs. Half of that half, which is 1/4 with water, and half with 1/4 of air. Right? So that's actually that's another print, that's Shastra. That's actually a fact. That's the best chemistry equation, for the belly. So if we try to give people that, even people who are chanting Hare Krishna, then that may not be possible. But what they can do is practice this, right? This higher principle, right? Or rather, I say it's more foundational principle, I want to say. More foundational, which is don't take anything which wasn't offered to Krishna with love and devotion. So then that's discussed by Prabhupada, that's the quality of that makes it a prasad, or that makes it acceptable offering to Krishna, is when it's done with love and devotion. So that's in the 9th chapter 26th verse, Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. Patram pushpam palam toyam. So that means fruits, flowers, leaves, and liquids. And Prabhupada describes there that toyam is a word which sometimes, which can refer in Sanskrit to liquids which are in the mode of goodness, like milk and water and juices like that. Right? And then he says, Yo me bhaktya prayachati. Yo me, whoever, yo me, unto me, bhaktya prayachati, offers with devotion. Bhaktya, right? So with devotion, so that's the quality. And there's a very beautiful, audio recording of Srila Prabhupada where he becomes very emotionally choked up when he describes this, that he explains the proper consciousness for making an offering to Krishna. And in this purport, he explains the background of that the devotee knows that this has been provided by the Lord, which is stated in the Sri Upanishad, that Ishavasa Sarvamidam. Everything actually is the Lord's property. He's the Isha, the controller. So that Isha Upanishad, that is referencing to the supreme controller. And it's stated in that Shastra that the Lord is the owner and the controller of everything, and therefore we should understand to whom it belongs and not take more than we deserve. Prabhupada many times he states that the Lord is happy to provide the necessities for all his children, just like a father would, right? And they all have different needs, but he is very reasonable to supply all their needs, right? And he does that even without them asking for it or recognizing that he's the provider. Just like, a child is not very conscious of the austerities that his parents perform for his welfare. Neither we are very conscious of the Lord's care and kindness to us. So the Shastra, this transcendental knowledge of the Lord's kindness and maintenance of all the living beings, that's kind of a preliminary thing. Is when we start to see that the Lord is my provider, the Lord is my protector, and he's giving me so much, right? Then we can switch our consciousness. Instead of approaching the Lord as a type of an order supplier, then we start giving to the Lord. Yes, Maharaj.
That verse, it goes like this. Jamani Jayate Shudra. Everyone is born Shudra. Sanskarit Bhavet Dvija. And by proper performance of these sanskaras, one becomes a Dvija. That's one of the samskaras. One takes Diksha from a spiritual master, Brahman. Then, Veda Patat Bhavet Vipra. Next one is, when he becomes learned in the Vedas, when he studies the Vedas, then he's known as the Vipra, one who knows the Vedas. And then, Brahma Janati Brahma. But one who knows Brahma, the spirit, he actually is a Brahman. Those are the categories.
Right. So that was. Thank you so much. So this Brahman can be realized in three phases, which is discussed in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That Tattvavidas, the learned persons who know the truth, they have concluded that Brahman, or the non-dual substance, non-dual, absolute truth, it can be realized in three features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Right? So the Bhagavan is the owner of all the opulences, and some people try to explain an ultimate truth. The keyword is try. They try to explain the ultimate truth as something without any qualities. So that itself is actually a flawed, procedure, because I'm actually attributing qualities to something which I'm philosophically saying is without qualities. All right. So then I try to explain it, right? But then there's other classes which say it can't be explained, so better you don't talk about it. As soon as you talk about it, then you missed it, you lost it. So then that's the frustration with some different, philosophical conclusions, is that, nobody can ever be satisfied because there's no actual answers about what is beyond matter. They say that beyond matter there is the unlimited or the infinite and light, and then they also may say that it's full of truth and its righteousness and those things are good. Those things are good, but if the absolute truth is without, any definition, then how can personal qualities be attributed there? It's like, what is truthful? All right, truthfulness is actually it's about personhood. It's actually a quality which is attributed to persons. Righteousness is actually, is it righteous for a rock, to just be there? We say, well, if a person knowingly picks up the rock and throws it at another person's property, then we can say that was unrighteous. But is it unrighteous to, be afflicted by some? Is it unrighteous for the hail to fall? So that's another discussion, right? But what I'm trying to say is that philosophers who are in this Brahman platform, they haven't, reached the full maturity of consideration, and they haven't made full realization, complete realization. Then that complete realization develops, and then they start to understand that the source of this infinite energy is actually localized within every atom and in everyone's heart, and is guiding everybody, towards that supreme Param Dhamma, to that absolute abode. And then that localized aspect is simply an expansion of the personal feature of the personality of Godhead. And he's a person, and he's the one who cares about me and loves me, and I'm meant to serve him out of love as well. And then he becomes Vaishnava, right? So Prabhupada discusses at the very beginning of the purport that there's three qualities or three principles I'll read the sentence. The perfection of human life is attained by following 3 principles of civilization. So civilization should be based on these 3 principles. And when the civilization deviates from these 3 principles, what we can understand is the antithesis of this, that the degradation or the imperfection of human life is attained by not following the 3 principles of civilization, namely protecting cows, maintaining the Brahminical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. And this is discussed by Prabhupada all up and down the purports. Specifically we hear quite a bit about this in the first canto when we were hearing about Parikshit Maharaj and how the age of Kali was approaching and how Dharma had, in the form of a bull, was without 3 legs, or 3 legs were damaged, and 1 leg was standing and being threatened by Kali Yuga. It's important to understand that the last leg of Dharma, or religious life, or righteous life for human society, is truthfulness. That leg is being attacked by Kali Yuga. And Brahminical culture, specifically, this ISKCON movement is meant for maintaining truthfulness in society. This is without this leg, there cannot be any, there cannot be any righteous behavior because there's no truth. So the Brahmanas and specifically the Vaishnavas have a very high, duty to uphold in this regard. Okay, maybe 1 minute.
My question is, so what is the difference between a person who is really truthful and a Brahmana and all these qualities, and a person who is a fault finder? I don't, because they might be both the same thing, but to me, I think truthfulness is like palatable and gentle. So is there any difference between a fault finder and a Brahmana?
You can research that. You can look up truthfulness, truth in the Veda base, and you'll find that many times Prabhupada described that sometimes the truth has to be spoken, and sometimes it stings. Right? So it's not that the devotees, actually it's described, the divine qualities in the Bhagavad Gita, that aversion to fault finding is actually a divine quality. Right? So in general, devotees and Brahmanas even, they're not interested in finding faults, but identifying areas for improvement is a duty which is sometimes given by the spiritual master. And it is the duty of the spiritual master, given by his spiritual master, to find faults within his disciples for their benefit, not for any pleasure, materialistic pleasure or envy. Right? So sometimes that becomes our duty, and if it hasn't become our duty, then we can be very happy about that, and we can avoid it altogether. And we just look upon ourselves. Whenever we find faults in others, it's described by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada that same fault is honeycombing our own heart. And if you're a little bit careful, we see that. It's like our close associates are like mirrors, and we see ugly things in them. They're just holding a mirror for us. And we're just seeing ourselves and our bad qualities. So then if you have that knowledge, that higher perspective, then you use the fault-finding tendency of your conditioned nature, and you inject higher intelligence, and it becomes your ability to find your own faults and make improvements in your own devotional service. Right? But then when we act out on that and we start calling people out, or we act on that fault-finding, then we usually get in trouble because it may not be our service. Those are just some thoughts. Big topic. You made a nice point. The truth should be spoken palatably. That's there. And that's an austerity of speech, and that's important. But sometimes the truth also stings, and it's just like sometimes a surgeon has to make an incision. A surgeon has to use a scalpel, right? So he uses that not to hurt you, but to actually help you. Because he's going to take out something very gross, something very dirty from your body, but he has to use a kind of a sharp knife. So those are some thoughts on it. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.